everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Cognitive Discourse. I'm your host, Joseph Carrasco, and on today's reaction, we're going to be doing a James Klug reaction. He's been dropping some fire episodes as of late, and he just dropped one here recently. It is a part 3 to the campus that he's on. I believe he's in Oregon right now, shooting these videos. But I wanted to do a reaction to the newest one. And, if you guys like this one, I'll do the other two because the other two are also pretty juicy. I have seen those already, but I do enjoy those videos and I'd love to share them with you and share my opinion if you guys would like me to do that. So without further ado, let's get into this awesome episode.
People like to hear themselves reconfirmed, and so people don't want to hear your guys' discussions because they're like, oh, I want to be confirmed in my opinion. Even if I don't have backing or evidence against my decision or my policy, I'm still not going to talk to you guys. I don't want to be proven wrong.
Kids aren't getting puberty blockers? What is not happening that
I'm not putting myself on this platform. You guys are idiot losers.
Well,
Goodbye.
you just put yourself on.
You're the one inserting yourself into the platform.
Go home, you redneck loser.
Is that the best argument you can marshal?
So that's pretty funny. Just out the gate, we have a dude that is just a straight up goober. Funny enough, he actually looks like somebody that I know on the socials. Looks exactly like him, and I'm sure he acts just that way too. I always find these goobers funny because they assert themselves, like they said, into the conversation, and they don't really have anything. And these are supposed to be the loving, accepting folks, yet they are filled with hate. And instead of coming and having an actual conversation, or just ignoring it and keep it moving, they come and make themselves look like idiots. I love it.
I mean, I feel like denying trans people life-saving care is a kind of rude thing to do.
Life-saving care?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so denying trans people their life-saving care is a rude thing to do.
Do you think it saves kids' lives to stop their bodies from going through puberty?
I think it does.
How come?
Because there's studies showing that, like, people who transition, who are pre-transitioning. How do I explain this?
It's okay, take your time. No pressure.
Oh, she didn't like that.
Hey, what's up?
Children cannot consent.
So, what I find funny is that she's going to try to talk numbers here, talk statistics, but she failed. And although I feel like James kind of took a little jab there, I get what he's saying. Like, yeah, take your time. Like, we are willing to wait to hear this out. And I don't think she liked that very much. But one of the things that I know that I've seen and heard is that again, I have my own children. They're not being indoctrinated with this garbage. But from what I understand and what I've heard before is that doctors are not giving parents and children that are having these issues much of an option. They're pretty much saying stuff like you could either transition the kid or they're going to kill themselves, which is kind of frightening to parents who aren't in the know with this type of stuff. That can be pretty frightening and pretty intimidating. And then as a parent, you just want the best for your kid. So when you hear about the indoctrination and all this type of stuff, this is the type of stuff that really bothers individuals like myself. Taking a kid in there, trying to put your faith in these doctors, and some of these doctors are willing to mutilate your children. I don't know if it's for the sake of virtue signaling or what, but yeah, it gets pretty dark.
To puberty blockers. Well, why do you think they can't?
Well, because they're 10 years old. I mean, they still believe in Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny and the Tooth Fairy. And we're giving them an experimental drug which has never been approved for this purpose. It's actually a cancer drug that was approved for prostate cancer, for endometriosis in women. Same drug has been given to pedophiles to chemically castrate them because it takes their testosterone to zero. They give them a drug, it's normally a drug called Lupron, and it stops their bodies from going into puberty. So girls' breasts won't grow, their hips don't get wider, boys' penises don't grow.
Now, that's something that you don't hear in the conversation a lot, and I think it's something that is very important. And what he mentions about the breasts don't grow, the micro penises that these boys are going to inherently have when they get older. So they always want to bring up the suicide conversation, but they never stop to think about what about that child who grows into an adult and wants to detransition, and now they're stuck with this micro penis or they're stuck with no breasts. or they've gotten them chopped off and now they can't breastfeed their child as an adult. These are the type of things that they don't want to talk about, that these are also factors that can play into eventual suicide later in life.
Affects their bone density, it affects all sorts of things. But we're stopping the physical development of children. Based on what? Based on a belief that because they don't conform to society's standards of how they should stereotypically be according to their sex, that this therefore means they are born in the wrong body.
And I like the point that he just brought up there, because you'll hear it a lot from these people on the left and people who support this type of stuff. The transition of children is that they are the group, they're supposed to be the group of love and acceptance. Yet, how are we supposed to take you seriously when you say that if you can't love and accept who you are the way you were born? It makes no sense to me. Their logic is always really flawed. So I'm glad that he brought that up.
What does that even mean?
Well, it just has to do with your identity and who you are. You know, isn't like the
So
whole,
what does that mean, though?
what do you mean? Like the whole point of being who you are isn't like part of what our country stands for?
Do you think there's a right or a wrong answer to that question?
I don't think so. I think that sometimes it all depends on your stance. It depends on how your life is going, I guess. Like, we're all living our own separate life.
There's
So,
a
like,
conversation.
How
to be
your life
had.
is going at like 10 years old?
I don't know. It's such, everything is kind of controversial nowadays. So it's like, it's hard to talk about things.
What does it mean, be who?
So I think he is just scared to give his actual opinion. That's what the mob tends to do. The mob tends to scare individuals who are weak in their way of thinking and their ideologies. So I get a weird vibe off that guy. Like he's trying to kind of remain on the fence and be like, I kind of agree with you guys, but I don't want to say too much because I don't know who's listening. And it's a very coward way of thinking, if you will.
Who you are.
You be what you want to be what your identity tells you to do. Be what your mind wants to be.
You know, and I think a lot of people would understand that if you were talking about adults. You are talking about children here. Children can't just go out and get tattoos. They can't go drink. They can't go, hook up with an older adult. They can't even go see rated R movies, but we're talking about irreversible procedures that they can do.
They're sterilizing kids.
Mm-hmm.
They're
So
cutting
aren't
off
there,
the body
aren't there
parts of
rules for
children.
children?
Also, I just want to point out, what is this chick doing? Like, you're not trying to be in the conversation. I get you. Maybe you're just trying to be a bystander, wanting to listen to the dialogue that's being told. But why do you have to stand in the way of the camera when you're clearly not listening half the time? You got your face planted in your phone. No one wants to stare at your tatas. Like, go away.
Yeah, I would say that there are definitely rules that protect them.
Okay.
For sure.
Okay, so we got that going.
Yeah.
Like these kids, for the boys in particular, the president of the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, these are the people who write the standards of care for the gender clinics.
Yeah.
He admits in a video, his name's Marcy Bowers, that literally 0 of these boys as adults have been able to have an orgasm. We're turning
Wow.
these kids into anorgasmic, lifelong medical patients, sterilized, and
Again, so you want to talk about the suicide thing. All this stuff can lead to suicide. Micro penis, no breasts, not being able to have that type of sexual satisfaction, all that type of stuff could lead to somebody wanting to end it all. But they don't want to have that conversation.
calling this love and inclusion when we know historically from all the academic studies that have ever been done into this condition called gender dysphoria. That's what this is called, when these kids feel a mismatch between their sex and their inner gender identity. It's called gender dysphoria. We know historically that if you just let kids go through puberty, more than 80% of the time they just grow out of it. They don't even know what sex is. How can
And again, that range true for why we see such a huge uptick in all this stuff. People don't want to believe that this stuff is being pushed on us and forced down our throats. And a lot of times the people who are for this type of stuff will say, oh, it's not being force fed to you. You're just a transphobe. You're just a bigot. They start throwing all these names out there. Yet, I mean, what he just said, 80% of those people, if you just leave the kids alone, they'll figure out who they are. We don't need to push it on them at such a young age. And that, again, that's why we see this uptick all of a sudden, because it's parents, it's teachers, it's the TV, it's mainstream media, it's Hollywood, it's the Biden administration, it's corporations. All these entities are pushing this stuff on children. The children are the target, and it's sad, man. It's sad. It's frustrating. But again, yeah, if anybody ever screams that the alphabet mafia is oppressed, or trans people are oppressed, remember they have backing by the mainstream media, corporations, Hollywood, the Biden administration. All of them are backing them. The last time I checked, that wasn't oppression.
They possibly consent to throwing away adult sexual function, to sterilizing themselves, to not having a family. They're 10, 11, 12.
Well, yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah.
What are your
I also just want to point out that, again, I have kids. I have a 4-year-old, and actually in the next couple of days, my 6-year-old will be turning 7. They are very young, very impressionable. Their minds are like sponges. The funny thing about it, though, is that my son thinks he's a freaking dinosaur. He's obsessed with dinosaurs. My daughter likes to pretend that she's Sonic the Hedgehog, or Wednesday Addams, or a pony from My Little Pony. But not once have I looked at my son and been like, "Yeah, you're a dinosaur. Let's go get you some surgery and let's turn you into a dinosaur." Or, "Yeah, let's turn you into Sonic." Never once have I told my daughter, "We're gonna paint you blue and we're gonna add some hair, and now you're gonna be Sonic the Hedgehog." This type of stuff is idiotic. Again, I've taught my kids the difference between imaginary and reality. They know when it's pretend time, and when they need to be themselves and based in reality. Yeah, this bit about a little kid thinking that there's something, or identifying and pushing the sexuality stuff on kids so young is just, it's wrong in my opinion.
Thoughts about what he's saying?
Excuse my language, but I actually think it's crazy. I didn't know any about this. I didn't know anything about it. It just came out the way right now, the way everything is happening. I just think it's kind of crazy because a lot of things happen in this world that just don't make sense. But I've never heard too much about this until right now.
So he seems like the type of kid that is definitely open to the idea and open to having this kind of conversation, which is a breath of fresh air.
What's going on? Would you like to participate?
Not necessarily. Are you having a conversation with him disagreeing?
No, he agrees, of course, because he's a sane human being.
Okay. Just to give you a heads up.
So she's come here to tell you that you shouldn't talk to me because what's going on in America today is illiberal people like this woman here think that you shouldn't be allowed to have a conversation about child harm.
So yeah, they nailed it right on the head. They knew who she was right away when they came. And again, these type of people I find hilarious, because these are the type of people that will call these 3 gentlemen fascists and bringing fascism to the campus. Yet they're not. She's actually that witch she blames them for. She's being the fascist. She's trying to come and shut down the conversation. She's trying to tell him, basically, walk away, don't listen to him. That is fascism by definition. She's trying to shut down the conversation instead of coming and joining the conversation, being part of the dialogue, having a discourse, and trying to find some common ground. She'd rather shut it down because she doesn't believe what they're saying.
She's come here to tell you to make sure that you're feeling safe. She doesn't even believe that you can possibly agree that we shouldn't be mutilating children because she thinks it's totally fine to mutilate and sterilize children. And she's come here to tell you that you shouldn't be talking to me because I'm spreading.
Are you actually trying to?
And as you can see, she's doing the childish antics. She's a grown child, an adult child, and you can see that by the way she's responding with her facial expressions. Instead of just coming out right and saying why she's there and what she's trying to do, she's basically being a mockery and valuing herself as immature as possible.
Shut down the conversation?
I was just wanting to say that oftentimes when organizations have cameras, they usually edit videos in a way that it may not be favorable to you.
So it is true.
So it is true. You're coming over here.
Which a lot of times is a lie. A lot of these content creators that I watch, they're more than happy to give and put up the unedited version of this. It's edited for time. These conversations, you're seeing they're asking the question, they're giving answers, and there's no immediate cuts. So that's just a false premise that they like to use because it somehow makes sense in their mind.
It is true.
Conversation.
Yeah, it is true.
Obviously.
So why don't you just be honest and say it's true?
Oh, I just don't want to contribute money to an organization that profits off of social media and
Then
I'm
don't.
not
based
an
upon
organization.
It's
I'm
not
just
an
a person having
organization.
conversation.
I would argue.
organization.
What's happening here is much more important than being a more authoritarian stance of shutting down conversation on a
Yep.
place that actually open dialogue should be encouraged. So I
Yep.
would say what you're
on a college
doing
campus.
here is much worse than
Yep.
And it's dishonest.
having a conversation
It's
in public.
dishonest.
It's
You should
incredibly
just say,
dishonest.
We don't
How
want.
would
We don't
you-
want him to talk to people.
Yeah. If
How
you
would
disagree with this, you can
Yeah,
you can
we
let
can
us
have a
know, and you
conversation
can
about
join the
this.
conversation, or you can let somebody else actually exercise their freedom of speech.
How would
Yep.
you define open dialogue?
Open dialogue is allowing you to speak your mind. If you want to give us your opinion on this and have a conversation with us, that's excellent. And we're going to have a respectful conversation, no personal attacks, and definitely no shutting down of somebody else's voice.
And you-
This is kind of one of the reasons why I like watching these and not doing them myself, because I don't have the patience nor the maturity level to stay level-headed like these guys do. I'm all about having open dialogue, but the moment somebody, I tend to be a reflection of the individual that I'm speaking to. So if they tend to start getting to a point where they start calling names and stuff like that, I can fall into that very quickly. I'm very aware of myself in that sense. So yeah, this is why I do this instead.
Actually
hundreds
interrupting him to shut down the conversation.
Do you think we should be
Yeah, she was trying to shut him down, like a fascist.
sterilizing kids though? What about
It's-
kids with autism? Because half these kids have autism who are going to
I don't know.
the
It's
clinic.
it's hard because
It's not though. Again, we're back to this kid. I really feel like he's afraid to speak his mind because of the campus and the state that he's in. I think he's scared of the mob. And I think he's not alone. There's a lot of people like this.
What is hard about that question?
Exactly.
Well, yeah. If you know, and there's no tricks here. Like, what is hard about what he's saying there?
what do you
with the
consider a kid? Just
emphasis
someone
on the
under
first
18?
word.
Yeah.
Under 18?
Yes.
Like
let's
a 12.
use
Let's
12.
let's take a 12-year-old.
12. I mean, they're children, so I don't
Correct.
know.
They're
It's
just
hard.
little.
It's hard to put a number on what you could do.
Okay.
Because like 18, you're an adult and you
right.
can
But
do
that's
whatever
not
you
what
want.
he's saying.
Right.
Yeah, 18, you're an adult.
Yeah, they start kids on puberty blockers at like 10, 11, 12.
See, and that's the point that this guy with the sign is trying to make. Like, again, we get painted as the enemy, and we get painted as transphobic, and all these labels that they want to put on people like myself and like these gentlemen here, when they don't stop to think. Like, the argument that we are fighting against is if you're an adult, do you have fun? It's the children we're trying to protect. And I don't understand what's so hard to understand about that. Like, we don't want the children targeted. If you're an adult, you're 18 years old, by all means. If you want to cut your willy off, you want to cut your breasts off, by all means. But understand that you're an adult and you are making an adult decision. Children don't have the mental capacity to understand those type of decisions. And again, like I did, like the last video I did, the lady also talked about the brain not being fully developed until 25. That's an argument for our side. Exactly. So if the brain isn't developed till 25, how do you make it make sense in your brain to think it's okay to transition children under 18?
There are studies showing that children who are unable to transition, and keep in mind, most of the time they're not being given hormones at 13. They're given puberty blockers to stop them from going through what they feel is the wrong puberty. Okay. And their experience it. I don't want to have this conversation.
No. You're
doing
onto
great.
something. You want him to take it, or
I mean, I'm going to be late to class.
right?
Oh Lord. Okay. So you're gonna insert yourself into the conversation, and then once you realize either one, you are super underprepared for these guys, or two, you realize what you're talking about is utter nonsense. This is what they do. They then turn around and run away, or they make excuses. Oh, you're late for class. Well, nobody told you to insert yourself. You did that, you goober. So that's why the camera's on you. That's why they're talking to you. You invited yourself to the conversation. So either stand behind what you believe, or maybe listen to them, hear them out. Maybe try not to silence them and listen to what they have to say. You might learn something.
Come here and tell people not to talk. You don't find that to be a problem.
Did I say you couldn't talk?
No, but think
She
about what
asserted
you
yourself.
said and how dishonest it was.
Yep.
I didn't say that exact thing. I was just trying to shut down the
I feel
conversation.
like I asked a question.
Nah, it was a disingenuous.
Yeah, it was
looking
just
to
that
shut down
Andy
conversation and
went
get him
over
away
him.
from
Now,
having
but
a
if you
calling
want to
her
talk
out.
about that, we will
actually what you
engage
were
you
doing.
in good
I'm sorry
faith.
that you feel that way.
No, no, it's
I hate when people do that too. That is a passive aggressive way of saying fuck you. I'm sorry you feel that way. That's you telling me that you think that I can't control my emotions when you're actually the one being the emotional one. So it again being disingenuous, like he said, she's literally portraying that very thing that he accused her of.
It's
you're
not about
doing.
anybody feeling it. That's what you're doing.
So I wanted to ask you, are you comfortable if I ask you about your dissertation work? That's not a rhetorical question, that's a serious question.
Yeah, I'm gonna move away from this. You can entertain her if you'd like.
There's no, the body positive message we should be sending is that there's no right way to be a boy or a girl,
Okay, I can understand that.
right?
Yeah,
everyone.
Yeah, dude. Can we just go back to fucking tomboys and boys being a little flamboyant? Like that's okay. Whatever happened to that? I remember growing up and seeing girls that were tomboyish and boys that were a little fancy pants. But this this bit of a girl wanting to be a little bit boyish and a boy being a little feminine, all of a sudden now we have to start cutting body parts off. We got to start giving them medications to alter their bodies and take away from what their bodies are naturally supposed to do. Like, come on, man, that's not cool.
Who gets that?
So can we possibly get you to jump on over to saying that this should be something for when your brain is a little bit more developed? Your prefrontal cortex, your decision-making part of your brain is more developed instead
compromise.
of 10 years old?
I just think it's a hard thing for me to say because I'm not part of that situation. I do think I'm all
So this is the mentality that these cult groups, that's why I call them the alphabet mafia. This is what happens. So he thinks that he can't have an opinion because he's not a part of said community. He's not a quote unquote ally. He doesn't feel like he has the right to say anything, and that's completely false. You can have an opinion, bro, and be confident in that opinion. Do research yourself, listen to both sides, and make a educated stance on where you stand, and be confident in it. Don't let the mobs scare you into submission, regardless of what side it's on, whether it be left or right. Do your own research, learn these things on your own, make your own choices and your own decision, and be confident in those, and don't back down from the mobs.
for the rights of transgender people, and no matter what you are.
We're all for the rights of
I
all
understand
people.
that. I understand that 10 years old can be a little young, and maybe you should have more of a developed brain.
I think with situations.
So I think if they if they actually talked to this kid a little bit more and actually gave him some information that he could look into independently on his own time, I feel like this guy definitely can make a good decision and have a decent stance on it. I think he's willing to listen, and that's a good thing.
As serious as medical, drugs, hormones, procedures on children, I think we should be able to have conversations about this. Just calm, fact-based, rational conversations, because there's nothing more important than our kids. So if you want to take some time to think about it and come back, you'd be more than welcome. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Is that cool?
I mean, as I speak from personal experience, I'm trans.
Okay.
I've transmasculine. Most people wouldn't think it looking at me. I've been on testosterone for 5 months as of Saturday. I feel so much happier with myself. And I started shortly after. I'm about to turn 19.
Okay.
I started December of last.
Okay, so you're an adult, so you're making an adult decision. Again, this sign is not about you. Then it's about children. And I would, if I was interviewing her, I'd ask her, okay, so then what made you wait till you were an adult? Because you obviously are just now transitioning. So what made you wait till you were an adult? Because you obviously waited, right? And if you had these feelings when you were a child, what what made you wait? Or did you even have these thoughts as a child? Those that was the type of questions I would have asked her.
Last year. But I knew I didn't start hormones until I was an adult, but I knew that I was not a cis woman by the time I was in middle school.
Okay, there we
May
go.
I ask what
why'd you
that
wait?
means to know that you're not a cis woman? I understand the jargon, but what does it mean to know that you're not a girl?
I felt uncomfortable with the labels of femininity being pushed on me. And
So why not just be a masculine woman? I mean, why deny that you're a female who just happens to have more masculine traits? Again, going back to what I said earlier, tomboys and feminine boys, fancy pants. I know some people might get triggered by me using that term, but flamboyant males and masculine women, did they exist? You don't need to change your entire gender and identity because you feel more masculine than you probably should. I mean, I don't see the issue there.
you know, I I think in the recent years there's been a lot more ability to verbalize that kind of stuff. I mean, when I was in middle school, that was 2016 for me. We weren't having all these sorts of conversations.
Right.
My partner is not trans, but they're
Non-binary?
non-binary.
Okay.
And so, they thought about going on hormone blockers to, cancel out some female traits. Back in middle school, they were having the thoughts of dressing more masculine and stuff. So what if...
So his girlfriend is non-binary, yet is taking medication to get rid of the feminine traits. But isn't non-binary neither? So if you identify as non-binary, why would you need to take medication to get rid of the female traits if you're not a female? Like, this shit never makes sense to me.
They wanted to get on... their parents aren't very good parents. They kicked them out the house and left them on the street. So how about that? What if the parents aren't involved in their own life?
So
Do they have their own choice?
I'm very glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Because what we find almost invariably
Great question, by the
is
way.
that these kids have suffered trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And that's trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And so your partner should have been treated, and I hope they are still maybe getting treated for this trauma.
Yeah.
But what happens in so many cases is these traumatized or abused children are just getting puberty blocking drugs, cross-sex hormones, as though that's the source of their problems, not the trauma. That's not going to do anything to fix the trauma.
Yeah.
It's just going to make it worse in the long run, because again, it's if you're not attacking the problem and you're just covering it up with other things, it didn't go away. It's still there, and it's going to come up with a vengeance later in life.
We need to address that and let these kids grow up and take care of these other mental health problems, abuse, trauma. That's not controversial. It shouldn't be. But instead, we're treating gender as though it's the source of all their problems and to solve everything, and that doesn't work.
Yeah. So do you think that they, as a child, if they wanted to, they could get it? And then if it's a bad choice later in life, they would understand and maybe change back? I know that it would...
Yeah.
Yes and no. If it didn't do permanent damage, that's the problem. That's why we say children should wait. Again, we've talked about the micropenis. We've talked about the small breast. We've talked about the fact that if you're chopping off body parts, you can't get those back. But in this case, we're talking about puberty blockers and stuff like that. You're altering your body's natural instinct and development. So there's no going back from that. So this is why you need to understand that if you think that a child would regret it later in life, then that child shouldn't be doing it to begin with. And this is why we said protect the children. Wait till you're 18.
There'd be some consequences with
What do you think the consequences would be?
Yeah.
If they decide if they're not non-binary but they want to be transgender, and they have to go through further evaluation to see if they want to be go through a process.
Physical though, consequences though.
Yeah,
like
physical
what
consequences.
So historically, most kids with gender dysphoria, which is how we should always frame this, most of them grow up and out of it.
Yeah.
The cure for gender dysphoria in almost all cases is puberty itself. Now we block the cure. So I don't think children are mature enough, cognitively developed enough. Our prefrontal cortex, the part of our brain responsible for logical decision making, keeps developing until we're about 25.
Yeah.
So I don't think a 12, 13, 15-year-old is competent to make decisions about their own sterilization, about destroying their future adult sexual function, because that happens to the boys, especially.
Do
to
you
not
think?
being able to have.
So that's again, I think that's where the compromise can be: is let children be children, leave kids alone. When you're 18 years old, I think you're free to make the decision. Once you go through puberty and you're already kind of going into your adulthood and past your teenage years, chances are you're going to forget about that thought process anyway, and you're going to not want to transition anyway. You're not going to deal with all that stuff because you've matured. And when you're 18, yeah, like the lady that was talking earlier, she's 19 and she wants to go through with it. That's fine. But at least you can make a better informed decision as an adult.
A family.
But what about
Really quick,
Yeah.
do you think that they're capable of making that decision that he's talking about
That's
right
just
there?
their decision. It's just their decision. I don't think they're.
This guy shouldn't have kids. I'm sorry. I really, and I have people in my family that are like this too. I really don't like when parents give a ton of freedom, especially to little kids. Little kids need guidance. They need rearing to understand life and some of the complexities in life. Children are always looking for guidance, and you as a parent that's what you should be giving. Nowadays, too many parents think, oh, well, I give them food, I give them shelter, I give them clothes, my job's done. It's like it's a lot deeper than that. If you're not going to give them guidance, bonehead teachers are, and if they're going to go to college, they're going to get indoctrinated all through elementary, middle, and high school, and then when they get to college, it's going to continue. Parents need to be more involved, and this guy's mentality is a mentality that, me personally, I don't think he should have children.
There can always be doubts.
So children just make the decision about what else do they make the decision
You
about?
don't let them take drugs, right?
No, but they can. They can if they would like to.
In Oregon right now, they're about to pass a law where any 15-year-old can get gender surgery, even without parental approval.
Yeah. Should it be that easy?
Dude, if you need parental permission to get a piercing at 15 and 16, then you should definitely need a parent's consent to make life-altering transformations. When I got my first piercing, I was 16, and I needed my mom to sign off on it. And look at me now. I'm in my 30s. I got my face was covered in piercings. I don't have them anymore. I grew out of it.
Oh, just with what he's saying right there. Should it be that easy?
I'm not sure if it should be that easy, but I do think ultimately it should be up to the choice of the child.
Do you hold that viewpoint for every other aspect of childhood when it comes to
I
tattoos?
wouldn't say that. I want to say that.
Why would you not say that?
Yeah.
With let's
Come
say
on,
tattoos.
man.
Would you
Stay
say?
consistent.
Well, I don't know. I guess it's just I had to think about that.
Okay, that's
Sure.
okay.
That's a fair statement.
That's very reasonable. Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah, we don't want to put you on the spot here. We're talking about new concepts and new information, so it's just great to have an open mind to think about this.
Yeah.
And really what we want to achieve here is to start conversations.
I don't know is a great answer.
Yeah.
It's always a
Right,
good
and
answer.
that's why
100%.
everyone's responding that way, because you're at least saying, hey, you know what, I don't know,
Open
I can
to
think about
consider it,
that,
think
and,
about
and
right,
that is absolutely okay.
If I may overshare, I have someone in my family who's
Jump
young,
in.
who has a tattoo, who tattooed herself. I don't know what they call it, the prison tat kind of thing.
Stick and poke.
Stick and poke, yeah, that's what it is. And she
I don't have one.
she regrets having done that. And so she regrets having done that. It's reasonable to assume that if you're young and you make decisions that have permanent consequences, that they may regret other decisions that they've had.
I'm a prime example of that. There were some tattoo ideas that I wanted when I was younger, even when I was 18, that I wanted to get. There was a tattoo that I almost got at a tattoo convention. I ended up getting my snake bites that time instead. But looking back now, I'm kind of glad that I didn't get some of those tattoos, because I probably would have regretted them, because they're not either stuff that I'm not into anymore, or just the style itself. I was into that style when I was younger, but as a 30-year-old man, I'm not into that anymore. I'll be 35 this year. I'm not into that type of stuff. So I mean, even now, there's tattoos that I want. I still want to get sleeves. I'm still very on the fence about it. And as long as I'm on the fence about it, I won't get those tattoos until I'm 100% confident that I want them. And so, because of that, I may never get them because I just don't know if we'll ever get off the fence on getting said tattoos, the designs rather.
Yeah.
Now, as you get older, that becomes quite different because your brain, your frontal lobe is formed, and your decision-making process ideally would be more refined.
Did you thought something he was saying was funny? Do you mind if I ask you? And I'll get back to you.
The
okay?
tattoo, like him relating the tattoo to like the gender stuff. That was, I don't know, that was kind of funny to me.
Why was that funny?
Because it's a tattoo. It lasts forever. Like we all have, but like how are you gonna compare a tattoo to like puberty blockers?
You can't. Yeah,
so that's why I was laughing, because it didn't really make sense when you were saying it.
Yeah.
Like,
Which one's?
But the point he was trying to drive home was the fact of doing something when you're young, when you're developing, right? And then later on regretting it. That's the comparison that he's using there. Yes, a tattoo is far different than taking puberty blockers or cutting off body parts. But again, his point that he was trying to drive home was when you're a child, your opinions change on things. Your perspective changes as you grow and you mature and you develop. That's what he was trying to. That was the point. Or at least that's the point that I'm kind of getting from the way he worded that.
Yeah.
Which one is more permanent, would you say?
I mean, obviously the puberty blockers.
Right.
You can get this removed.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
Like it's not that
Any excuse to flick people off, right?
hard.
So, James, I think.
yeah, that
No,
was
you
my
guys are
question.
just sick, disgusting trash. I'm not gonna humor you.
This
You're
kid again.
humoring us right now.
Right in the
All right, yeah, that's
Wow, that's
great.
It's so funny because those are the dudes that have never been punched in the face. They call people and label people exactly what they are. So those are the type of people that will call you a fascist. Yet look at the way he's acting. So yeah, what a goob.
I saw you guys on YouTube before, right?
Is that the best argument that you
Go
can
to
make?
class,
Is that the
nerd.
best reason you can give?
I believe in human rights. You guys are fascists.
how
See,
so?
there it is. There it is. You guys are fucking fascists, yet he's the one disrupting the conversation, not allowing people to have dialogue. And really, it's these type of people. I actually kind of like these people sometimes because, especially when you have somebody who's on the fence, who's just trying to understand the point of view, like these gentlemen that are here. Those type of people tend to push those people into being more interested in the other side because they're being so mature about it. I know if I was on the side of that goober and he was coming up to me trying to cut off my conversation with them, I would check him. Be like, yo, man, I'm on your side, but I'm trying to understand what they're doing. Don't tell me what I can and can't do. This is why I laugh, because it's a cult, this mob mentality. It's why a lot of kids in colleges who don't agree with this crap, they won't say anything because they're outnumbered.
How
Yeah.
so?
All right.
Isn't a
No,
key
he
point of
doesn't.
fascism shutting
How's it going,
down
man?
open debate?
Good to meet you.
Exactly.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. I support what you guys are
What's
doing,
up, man?
especially on this campus. You're all brave.
So
That's
this
their
is a
thing.
thing going on in society today where more and more adults are giving children agency over all of their decisions.
Which is not
But
cool.
it's neglecting this most fundamental truth, which is that children need parents
Yep.
Yeah, that's
for a
no
reason.
doubt.
And they
I mean, am I the last generation that remembers the saying, it takes a village? I remember growing up, and if I stepped out of line in public, it was okay for somebody else who I didn't know to check me and say, hey, don't do that. It was okay for society to look out for your children and to try to steer them in the right direction. Nowadays, you can't say shit to a kid, correct a kid's behavior, let alone say hi to a kid without being labeled a pedophile. But times have definitely changed. And like I said earlier, this guy definitely doesn't deserve to have kids, because he has that mentality of, I'm not going to tell my kids what to do, so you better not tell my kids what to do. Like, kids need direction. kids need parents that are going to be involved, plain and simple.
They cannot make all these decisions because of the very fact that they're children.
Would you have the same opinion about, let's say, a 15-year-old girl was like, hey, you know what, I actually want, let's say, liposuction for, maybe they're anorexic or something, you want to affirm them, you get them liposuction, or let's say you get them lip filler, or let's say you get some other body modification. Children should be able to make that decision, is that correct?
Is this are you guys trying to do law-based? Are you trying to make it where the parents have the decision to allow them to do it?
I guess we would be more talking about what should be allowed
really, I'm just
under law.
talking philosophically about the whole thing.
It's a moral claim.
It's a moral claim.
And from that, the legal stuff flows.
Right. Yeah, and ideally, I would like the medical bodies, the American Academy of Pediatrics, to conduct a systematic review, because they're not listening to their own doctors within their body. There's, I think, there's a few 100,000 pediatricians, part of the AAP, and a lot of the doctors are asking them to do a review, and they won't. And other medical bodies around the world have, and they found that there's no evidence to support this. But this whole subject of giving agency to children, we would never say a 13-year-old can consent to sex with a 40-year-old, because they just can't. They don't understand what they're signing up for.
Even though people are trying. For those of you who don't know who MAPS are, it is basically the nice way of calling a pedo a pedo. Stands for minor attracted persons, and they are definitely trying to weasel their way into the alphabet mafia's community. And I think that's one thing that we, for the most part, the majority of us can link up. The alphabet mafia and the people who aren't part of that cult can join hands and say, we don't like pedos. But they need to understand that they have infiltrated the community, and they're going to continue infiltrating the community because you have snakes within your community that are trying to make this okay, and it's not okay. Pedophile on my eyes will get dropped on sight. And look into what the pedo flag looks like. They even have their own flag, just like the LGBT alphabet mafia has a bunch of flags. The MAPS have their own flag to identify themselves.
Yeah.
But we say they can consent to changing their sex. And,
I understand where you're coming
from.
Yeah.
If you talk to most 20-year-old women and you say, hey, do you want to have kids? They go, no way. Fast forward 10 years, they're 30 years old, and the ultimatum for the husband is babies or divorce, because now they want kids. We change. We change from 10 to 15, 15 to 20, 20 to 30 drastically.
Yes,
You're about 20 years old.
Yeah.
Are you different than when you were 10?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
There you go.
And what sort of wisdom did you have when you were 10?
I wouldn't say a whole lot.
Not a whole lot. You're just...
I could name the original 150 Pokemon at 10. That was my big claim to fame.
Job has been going to school and learning your timetables. And most kids at 10 don't even know their timetables. But now we're asking them to be able to consent to lifelong medical decisions.
Dude, I barely know them
becoming
now.
a lifelong pharmaceutical patient as well. Because what happens to these kids is they have to rely on external sources of hormones for the rest of their life.
Yep.
These girls are getting hysterectomies, they're getting their ovaries cut out as well. Now they can't even produce estrogen if they want to. So if they, at 25 years of age, at the ripe old age of 25, if they decided they've made a mistake, they've lost their womb, they've lost their ovaries, they can't produce estrogen. So now they're buying some exogenous source of estrogen for the rest of their life. For these boys who get these surgeries done, these vaginoplasties they're called, they have to dilate for the rest of their life and take estrogen. These are not the kids who are thriving, these aren't the college quarterbacks and the cheerleaders and whatever. These are kids who are struggling in life. They're kids in foster care, they're kids with autism, their parents are 10 times as likely to have been sex offenders, statistically. And now we just fast-track them into this medical pathway without any FDA approval for any of it. It's just all ideological. And again, it goes back to this basic philosophy of you were born in the wrong body because you don't conform to stereotypes.
Do you learn about this in your classes?
Out of the ones I'm taking.
But there are options at the university where you'd be able to learn about things.
Do you hear about it on campus? Do you guys hear about it on campus in other ways to a certain extent, or no?
I think to a certain extent.
Okay.
I mean, not like all the time. I mean, maybe if you go like looking for it, but it's not hard to find. I mean, we go to the U of O. We're like let's be real. We're pretty. How do you call it?
Pretty left-leaning university.
Yeah, we're pretty left. university, I feel.
Hey man, how's it going?
Yeah, I'm just a big fan, so
Oh.
thank you guys for doing all
Yeah,
that.
thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Cool,
Do you mind if I
thank
get
you.
a photo?
We're doing the black camera.
You want to have a conversation?
You want to have a conversation about it and explain yourself?
It's just so interesting that
Always, man. It's always these goobers who just they do these drive-by insults. That's all they have. They just drive-by insults. Again, never been punched in the face. They've never been told no. They have no real arguments. They're just gonna run by, label you. It's a drive-by insult. What a goober.
people will say, get a life, losers, you, fascists, but the same people won't present their argument.
Yep. Never.
It's fascinating. He's calling us fascists, but yet he's involved.
Die, you rednecks. Why don't you quit being such a waste of oxygen?
Oh, you were the same person that ran away.
Why don't you present
You
your
want to have a
argument?
conversation
We'll
and
listen to
present
what you have to
your
say.
information?
Because I'm not going to give a platform to you Nazis. Why don't you go home?
You can't explain
and
your
quit being
position?
such losers.
He can't even make eye contact. This is how you know he's a weak beta male. Can't even make eye contact. Not even strong enough, talking shit, but not even strong enough to look the person in the eye and talk shit. You got to look at the ground like some goober. These type of people annoy me. These type of people are why I don't do these type of interviews, because I don't have the patience that these guys have.
My position is I care about human rights, and I care about people living their lives and minding their own business and not being in my face with stupid cameras.
He's only in your face because you came up to them, bro. You made yourself a part of this. So stop acting like a grown child. Get a pair of nuts and sack up.
So,
But you walked over
We
here.
can bring down the volume a little bit.
Yeah.
well, I don't care. I am
we're gonna
trying
be
to make a scene
respectful
Obviously.
because you guys
Can I
care
ask
about
you a couple
genociding
questions?
trans people.
That's
No,
not it.
you're not gonna ask me
Genociding? What
You think it's okay to
constitutes a
sterilize
genocide?
children?
What are you talking about?
None of this is actually happening. You guys are
Really?
dumb.
Really?
You're
Kids-
cherry picking.
Kids aren't getting puberty blockers. What is not happening that
I'm
he's
not putting
claiming?
myself on this platform. You guys are idiot
you're still
losers.
here.
Well, you
Goodbye.
just put yourself on.
You're the one inserting yourself into the platform.
What a dork.
Is that the
What a
best argument you can marshal?
It is.
He's going to go home and cry later and use his tears to jerk
I don't know how many people will be convinced.
He said that's not happening.
Right.
So this is the case with almost all these people. They don't believe these things are happening because they've done no research.
Mm-hmm.
They've only heard this surface level thing that this is about human rights and we need to let people be who they really are. They don't believe surgeries are happening
Those are the type of people that just read the headlines. They don't actually read articles.
on kids.
They don't believe surgeries, and
They don't believe they're getting sterilized. They don't know anything about it. They think I'm making stuff up.
See, so the problem with not wanting to have a conversation is you have to just guess what they think. That's the problem with not having a conversation.
What do you think when you're seeing this? We're getting some pushback, but not much.
Yeah, and again, I don't like to assume, but seeing how a lot of these people react, they all kind of have, it's almost like they have a template of how to be a goob, a dork. And so you kind of just start to assume things about them because they're all kind of the same at the end of the day.
I mean, most people are pretty open to this discussion and civil dialogue here.
That's
I mean,
good.
you're going to have some people a little more on the left and even on the far right here, but as long as you keep pretty good civil dialogue, I mean, there's really nothing wrong with it. So you're a political science major, and do issues of gender ever come up in your classes? I mean, yes, less so than most people would think, especially at this kind of university.
Okay.
I mean, this whole idea of like gender construct and the fight over like, puberty blockers, trans and LGBTQ rights within schools are relatively new.
When it comes to this debate at all, are you at all open about your opinions on this on campus? And
Yeah,
if
I'm
so, is
definitely
it
open
pretty
about it. Yeah.
Well received?
Yeah, I definitely believe sexual education. For example, well, people will say don't say gay bill, but it's really just a bill that introduced in Florida that kind of limits, sexual teaching or teaching about gender.
Parental rights and education.
Yeah, basically, I think when it comes to like introducing like gender or sexuality, that's something that should be really taught towards people going through puberty. I mean, we have sex ed in middle school, and I think that's a good time to teach it. I don't like seeing like 5-year-olds or even people in kindergarten, first grade being taught this because these people don't even know what sex is. They're not able to understand sexual attraction at that time. That's way too young.
Exactly. I also want you guys to take notice that the difference of people that they've interviewed in this video. You have people who are kind of on the fence, people who admit that they're not as educated in these things and they don't really know where they align themselves. Then you get people who are just grown children who are supposed to be the love and tolerant, yet are doing nothing but spreading the hate. And then you have people like this who also align themselves and understand where these three guys are coming from. And he's well spoken, he's well educated, and the reason why he has the stance that he has is because he's done the research himself. He's gone out and he's looked at the arguments and the articles himself, and so he's been able to inform himself and make an educated opinion and stance on where he stands.
I'm going to change the subject if that's okay. What year are you in?
I'm in my final year.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you're a seasoned political scientist.
I would say I'm pretty good at political science myself.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. So we were just called fascists, and I was wondering. I want to take advantage of his expertise. What does that mean that he's a is this what
so,
can you explain that?
Yeah,
using
so
your
as
expertise.
that kid was walking away, he yelled, "You guys are a fascist," and I even mentioned, I was like, clearly he does not know the definition of fascism. Yep. Fascism is silencing political opponents or silencing political debate. If this person's over here yelling at you all saying, "You guys can't be on campus, get off our campus, we don't want to hear what you have to say," that's more fascist than someone saying, "Hey, I want to have open civil dialogue." This right here is a clear example of a political right, political discussion. This is something that's protected within our Constitution and it should be protected and encouraged on campuses.
So when he's screaming at us that he's a fascist and we need to get off campus, is it reasonable to say that he's the fascist or he's supporting the fascist ideology?
I mean, by definition, he was a little more fascist than you guys. Fascist ideology is trying to silence political opponents.
You do? Like, they're kids.
I understand your guys' point.
They're little. My 11-year-old, I'm not sure, maybe she still believes in Santa Claus. She's just little. She's tiny. She doesn't know any adult stuff. And now if someone were to indoctrinate her to think that she's a boy just because maybe she's more masculine, and give her this experimental drug that would stop her body from developing? For the first time in human history, we're doing this to kids. Kids have been growing up for...
Yeah, and as a father myself, man, I couldn't imagine doing that to my children. And again, this is, I think, where a lot of the dialogue kind of gets muddied, is that if my kids grow up later in life and my son comes to me and tells me he's gay, or my daughter comes to me and tells me she's a lesbian or bi, or if they identify differently, then we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. If my kids decide that they want to be transitioned, then I will have that discussion with them when they're adults. And when I say I'll have that discussion with them, I'm not going to try to talk them out of it because they're adults. But I do want to go over, hey, these are the possible things that can happen. This is, really, again, the same way we were talking about the tattoo thing. Make sure it's a decision that they are 100% confident on before they go and make a life-changing decision. The thing I find funny is that because I don't want to do it to my children when they're young, I'm automatically labeled a transphobe and that I'm not a part of the community and blah, 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 blah. Again, I don't care what adults do in their own free time. I don't care who you love, who you want to have sex with, what you want to identify. None of that bothers me. Where I draw the line is when you start coming for the children. My issue with these men becoming women, my issue isn't with them transitioning into women. If they think they're women, by all means. Where I draw the line with that is when you start occupying women's spaces, start jumping into women's sports, taking away their accolades and their achievements. That's when I have to stand up and say, okay, this is not okay. But yeah, I could never see myself trying to push this type of ideology on my children. I love my children, and I love that my children love themselves, and they don't have to question themselves in this type of situation.
200,000 years on this planet that humans have been in existence. And whether you believe in God or evolution, this makes no sense, because if you believe in God, this ideology teaches that God made us wrong. And if you believe in evolution, this ideology is essentially saying that a billion years of the process of natural selection has failed. And for the first time in human history, we need a pharmaceutical company to help our children be who they really are. We've been going through puberty for millennia without killing ourselves.
Yep.
But now a lot of these young people think that puberty is a medical condition and you can go through the wrong puberty just because your body's developing. This is cult-like thinking.
Yep.
And at its base, this ideology is a lie, because there's no right way to be a boy or a girl. But this ideology teaches that stereotypes determine what your gender is. Instead of saying, be gender nonconforming. Beautiful. What's wrong with that?
You guys, I'm going to do him a favor.
Yeah.
He's trying to get to class.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for talking to us, man.
we
Thanks.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Children know a lot better than we give them credit for.
Okay. Well, I know you got to go to class. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk. I wish nothing but love and a long, fulfilling, happy life for you, and I thank you for taking the time to talk. We're going to be here in an hour if you want to continue it. But I think the most important thing out of all of this is that we should be able to have civil dialogue about this issue because it is a very important one. So I just really want to thank you for having it.
I think she was confused. She so wanted them to, and I think this speaks volumes about them, how well spoken they are, how knowledgeable they are in said topic, that they're able to stay level headed and do exactly what they're there to do, is have a discourse. And I think she was kind of taken back by that. I think she was hoping that they would engage negatively so she could be like, see, this is why, try to flip it, but this is why we can't have these conversations. You could see it in her demeanor. I don't think she wants to hate them, but because of the way that they are talking to her, it's hard to really hate them blindly. So yeah, they're definitely keeping the kill them with kindness attitude, and it's one of the reasons why I am a fan of this channel. And like I said, I'll leave a link down in the description to this very video, to this dude's channel. Go throw him a sub, a like, because they make really good content, and I love the way that they approach these conversations.
That behavior.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Okay, I'm
Because
gonna be real with you all.
it's not isolated.
Yeah,
This is very
especially
common.
among this generation, we've seen an introduction. I mean, we're the first generation that's completely raised within a digital age. We have a crazy influence when it comes to social media, and I think social media has contributed to a very strong mental illness incline in this nation, along with psychoactive drugs, which are a very, very dangerous thing that's being introduced to our kids. And so I think there's been more political divide among social media that creates an ideology where, like, it's one side versus our side. So a lot of these people see the right as the wrong side, and if you're on the right, you see the left as the wrong side. We have kind of lost this middle ground in our nation. So this divide just keeps getting wider and wider, and it also contributes to like mainstream media.
I will also say that the sides have been pulled so far away that it's really hard to even just be considered neutral anymore. Granted, you get more of it from the left, but the right is also responsible for it as well. I don't consider myself a conservative or a Republican. I don't consider myself a liberal or a Democrat. I'm kind of in the middle. I want to hear both sides, but the left has lost their mind so much that I tend to lean more right on my views on things. I also think just as I get older, I tend to lean more conservative. But even people who are kind of considered, but a few years ago considered more liberal, are being casted out by the far left, and they themselves don't even like the term liberal, when really I think liberals and leftists are completely two different entities. But I mean, look at somebody like Russell Brand. That guy, watching that dude get red pilled, as they call it, over the years has been an interesting watch. But he's the type of guy. He's very, very liberal in the way he thinks. I would even say he's more liberal than somebody like Joe Rogan, which some people don't believe that, but Joe Rogan was pulling for Bernie Sanders. Anyway, Russell Brand has been called a right wing extremist by media outlets. So again, we're living in a weird time where just everything has been shifted. It's really weird, man.
I mean, we don't really have, down the line mainstream media that's relatively available.
Right.
We have leftist media, right?
You have
right
echo
media.
chambers.
Exactly. And people like to hear themselves reconfirmed, and so people don't want to hear, your guys' discussions because they're like, oh, I want to be confirmed in my opinion, even if I don't have backing or a good, evidence against my decision or my policy. I'm still not going to talk to you guys. I don't want to be proven wrong.
Do you think this is a left versus right issue?
That's a great question.
I think it is a human issue. I don't think there should be any left or right
it's
issues.
a moral
I feel all
issue.
as Americans, we're all trying to do the best and live a pretty prosperous, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those we all want, and I believe there should be no left or right on that. It should just be those issues.
Beautiful.
So there we have it, guys. A James Klug reaction video. Klug, I think it's Klug. I keep saying Klug. I don't know why, but I think it's James Klug. So James, if you happen to watch this out of nowhere, I apologize for messing up your name. But there you have it. Another reaction video. I definitely enjoyed doing this one as well. He did have 2 more parts to this university that he was at. So I'm probably going to cover those two because there are some interesting stuff in there. But again, I have seen those videos already. This one was my first time viewing it, and I was watching it with you guys and reacting as we went along. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you think. Where do you sit with this topic? Are you for children being able to make life altering decisions, or are you against it? And where's your stance? And I'd love to read the comments and see where you stand um, on this, because again, I think at the very end they made a very good point that I don't think it's a left or a right issue. I think it's more of a morality issue of where your morals are and where you stand on that. So yeah, it'd be interesting to read your comments. Also, if you're a metal fan, don't forget to check out the Brutal Block on all streaming platforms. It's under Super Cool Radio. So you could literally just go to Spotify or whatever your streaming platform is, type in Super Cool Radio, and you will find Brutal Block in there. We have new episodes every Tuesday at noon that drop. And so if you're a metal fan, you will love this show because we love to play metal bands that you probably haven't heard of. And hopefully you will find some, if not all the bands on those episodes worthy enough to be on your own personal playlist. I also do Basic Ass Dudes on YouTube. It is a show that is kind of on hiatus right now, but eventually we will get back into it. But we cover pop culture type stuff on that show. So if that's something you want to check out, then check out Basic Ass Dudes. And yeah, man, I am going to continue making more content. I have so much more stuff to do. Check out my band Among War. I haven't really released any music here recently, but I am trying to finish some. So hopefully I'll have some music out for you guys to check out soon. I also do a lot of voiceover work. One of the podcasts that I've been doing here most recently is Haunted Abaddon. So if you'd like scary stories and you'd like to hear me read scary stories to you, then check that out. Haunted Abaddon is also on all streaming platforms. We are definitely trying some new cool things there. We kind of want to bring back audio theater. So I'm really trying to write stories that do that. The newest one that dropped, called The Interrogation, is one of those. It's kind of a dialogue based audio theater. Shout out to Nolan Gunther, who is the main brain behind Haunted Abaddon. He also does all the editing, and he makes it so cool. I literally just send him my voice and stories, and he turns them into the great artwork pieces that they are on that show. So definitely go check that out and let me know what you guys think about that. As always, I'll have all the links to everything down in the description. Excuse me. So check that out, and yeah, we'll see you guys on the next one. Have a good week, and until next time.